No, that's
Now we're on page Chaf Beis, and we got up to the second paragraph. Am I correct? What do you say, Steve? Am I on the right at the right place? Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda, and it was a case where his machshava was to place the dam of the carbon without zrika, and he would postpone the zrika until after shkia sacham, when the dam becomes possible. And yesterday we got stuck on this because this lechora is a classic mold of pigul. And for sure the carbon is possible because he's not going to be zork the dam until after shkia that chutzl's mana. But somehow the hinuach is a little bit different over here. Not sure why. Lohaniach is dama karba. Where did he put the dama karba? It says lohaniach. We may have to take out a Gemara and Zvachim first to figure out what the word lohaniach means. O shechishev lahotzi es hadam chutz la'azara. And again, I'm assuming that this is a machshav of chutz l'mkomo and generates pigul, because he posel adam biyotze makom he posel b'kach habi machshavas psul mishum shemachshava kemaisa v'habi ze arei ze keilu iniachas adam o hotziu lachutz v'nifsal hakorban. So what exactly is the chiddush here? I'm missing it. He says, "Time of the Rabbi Yehuda Smarahu, the whole mifsal b'otzav v'hinuach, mifsal nabi machshavas otzav v'hinuach." And then he writes in the name of English David, "Yesh l'stapik ger apsul Rabbi Yehuda mishum shezeh machshavas psul mishum dahavi keilu osa." So it's midin machshava midin maisa. I'm pretty sure this is not pigul. Anybody say it's pigul? No, it's not pigul. It's a psul. We'll call it machshava kemaisa. Call it a machshava poseles. It's a psul in the carbon, but it's not pigul. Why isn't this pigul? I mean, it's l'chor, it's chutzim zmano, chutzim koma. Somehow the word lahaniach. What does the word lahaniach mean? Maybe he's talking before the zrika itself. In other words, machshavas pigul is a machshava during the avoda. But here he didn't have the machshava during the avoda. I think, Steve, if I could trouble you, for Gemara's Zvachim, Lamed Heyamid Beis. We're getting a Gemara in Tzvachim. Just a second. You have Lamed Hey base there, yeah. We're trying to figure out what lo haniach means. Let me just read the next paragraph. I don't know if it's going to make it more difficult or it might help us. He says, "L'shita Rabbi Yehuda chichev lo haniach." Not lahotzia saimurim lachutz, but rather lo haniach hasaimurei hakarbon. Lo laktiram ad liachar alos hashachar. And once again, we're wondering, why isn't this a case of chutzlus mano, which is pigul? And we said that there's machshavas chutzlus mano, even with regard to the imurim. Ishev lahaktir seimurim liachar alos hashach. Isn't this exactly the same case of pigul? Lahaktir seimurim liachar alos hashachar. And the answer lies in the word lo haniach. Just don't know what the word lo haniach means in this context. Haniach haseimurei hakarbon.
Okay, so his intent was to leave the blood the next day. He did not intend to apply the blood, burn the sacrificial parts on their time. He merely intended to leave these things over without it going to burn. So he wasn't intending to use Rika.
It would just be where it is.
Right. He wasn't going to.
Nothing's going to happen.
Right.
See, without the Gemara and Zvachim, I would not know what is going on.
As opposed to saying, "Oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow."
Right.
And actually,
so Machshavas Pigul is when he says chutzlus mano chutzlus komo. Here, he's just not doing anything. I'm going to be passive. I'm going to let the dam hang around until after it becomes possible, or I'm going to let the emurim hang around until they become possible. But in the footnote here, he says, "Chishev lahotzi saimurim lechutz." So why is that not pigul? This is a footnote number tough. I don't know if we're ready for this. So again, we're talking about lo haniach. Is then, in the case of lo haniach hasadam, so that's possible. Then he had chishev lahotzi sadam chutz lazor. Or why isn't that people? Why isn't that people?
So the same reason, take it outside, but he has no intention to apply the dam.
So again, chutzim komo and pigul was that chishev lechol es kusara chutzim komo. But here he didn't have a machshava lechol es abasa chutzim komo. He's just going to take it out of the azara And the middle of the carbon is possible. Not that he, in a positive way, wanted to eat it outside the Azara. He's just going to take it out of the Azara. The dam will become possible biyotze, according to his machshava. But it's not pigul, because pigul means that he's going to eat the basar, or he maked the imurim outside the Azara or beyond Alos HaShachar. Put some komachus man. And now what's this case of a murim? Laniach as a muria carbon, lolak tiram, ha-carbon kosher. Why is the carbon kosher? What happened to the principle of machshava kemaisa? Me'acher ve'im tiskayim machshav lo yuchlu akonim lechol sabosar. Shekurim alos hashachar einam yicholim lechol mishum she'en konim rashav lechol bosel peyak tasim murim kol zman she'em ksherim. The achalos is bosel ha-bosel. Time zman achilos aficha af mishachishev kein But why is the carbon itself kosher? This is a general din in a murim. In other words, it's not worse than nitma or nevat, right? If the murim got lost or contracted tumah, and you can't burn the emurim, the carbon itself is still kosher. He's just being meniach the emurim. But the basar is nifsal lachila, because since there won't be aktaras emurim according to his machshava, then the kohen can't eat the basar. Very nice. Good. So now we understand what we're learning about. Wow. It's interesting because I'm not sure why this, I mean, he doesn't tell you that the Chachamim rejected Rabbi, but you get the impression this is a unique sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. I wish he would explain what the Chachamim would say. Would the Chachamim say that in such a case, we reject machshava kemaisa, the carbon is always kosher, or are they saying on the contrary, in all these cases it's going to be pigul? I don't know, what are the chachamim saying?
They're saying that the carbon is kosher.
The carbon is kosher, it's not pigul. No. And they're rejecting machshava kemaisa. And let me ask this, why doesn't he mention it? I mean, he's giving us an overview of Kodshim, and all he mentions is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. The Chacham argue in the Mishnah there.
Yeah.
And that's all Lamed Hey.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mention it? What happened here? I don't know, it's an oversight. Now, what happens here in Taf Yud Ches? So if you have the Gemara there, Steve, you want to fast forward to Lamed Vav, and look at a Tosas called Shiach Luhut. You have such a Tosas? So let's see, I'm going to read to you his summary here in the footnote. Ach im chisheg lahotzi es haimurim lechutz. Odem alos hashach. The lifso osam biyotze. Ein nifsal. Mishum shegam tizkai machshavto yuchlu kodem lechel sabasar shemiyad shenifslu amurim biyotze avi can never do amurim. Beautiful. Shakonim utorim b'achilas of kodem akdar say murim. So what's the case of a so 1 second. So in the case of Chishev laniach eseburi akar malol aktir mad liachar alos hashachar is the basar is possible. Why? Because if he leaves the emurim until after alos hashachar, the basar becomes possible. But in the case where his machshav was to remove the emurim from the azara, so then the status of the emurim is like nevdu or nitmu, and therefore you could eat the basar. Masha Einkein, if what? If it's li'achar alos hashachar, so how's li'achar alos hashachar different than kodem alos hashachar? Because li'achar alos hashachar, so then at that moment, the basar becomes possible. And why is the basar possible? Because the absence of the emurim, or is because of alos hashachar itself? Yeah, he says the achar alos hashachar basal ad basal. Times manachilosa. And in this case, where he says what? That he will leave the emurim, he will take the emurim out of the azara, and his machshava really is a machshava poselis emurim biyotze. Again, what was the case that we discussed before? Where he would not be mak to the emurim until after alos hashachar. Here it's Yotze. Okay? Do we have it? I think we have it. Hello, anybody home? Do we have it? Or should I review it? Steve, what do you say? Yeah, I think it's a beautiful chiluk. He's saying like this. If he's going to be mak to the murim in his machshava after alos hashachar, then he might have shut the basar as possible. Why? He can't eat the basar until alos hashachar because he hasn't yet been mak to the murim. And in order to eat the basar, you have to wait till after that tarsi murim. And once we get to alos hashachar, then the basar is possible because it's liachar zman achilosim. But if on the other hand, his intention was to take the emurim out of the azara, then that's like never. It's like the emurim just they dissipated into thin air. So then you can eat the basar because there's no emurim. So let's say you have machshava that after alos hashachar, he would take the emurim out of the azara. Then again, the basar would be possible. Good. Now, we know that Machshavas Pigul applies during any of the four avodos, but what about a case where the Zar shechts the carbon? This is very interesting. When you think about Mashevas Pigel, you automatically think, why did the Kohen do this? Is he guilty or is he a shogeg? Was he distracted? What happened? But we never thought that a Zar could create a Machshavas Pigel. But the answer is he can in Shechita, because Shechita Ksherim is Zar. Then we have Kabbalah, Holoch, and Srika. And he calls these the Avodos HaMatirim. Okay, we'll see the significance of classifying them as Matirim. Shashchita Matira Umekadeshes Es Hadam LeKabbalah. Not sure about this word Mekadeshes. Ba'ulacha Machshiris Hadam Lizrika. HaKabbalah Matira Mekadesh Sadam Lizrika. Shchita is Mekadesh Sadam LeKabbalah. Kabbalah is Materis Mekadesh Sadam Lizrika. Ba'ulacha Machshiris Hadam Lizrika. So in other words, halacha has a very interesting status, as he points out here in the footnote. On the one hand, halacha is not a materis, but on the other hand, it's a machshira. That's sufficient to upgrade it to the status of machshavas pigul. He avodas mati. I don't know, what does he mean? Hilkochi avodas matir. We just said it's not an avodas matir. It's only a machshira. He avodas matir. Nases dam shehu matir. In general, I don't know if halacha is an avoda. I mean, halacha is a technicality, but it's not always critical. I mean, if he shechted the carbon right next to the mizbeach, you don't even need halacha. You can immediately do the zrika and skip the halacha. What does he mean when he says halacha? Halacha he avodas mati. Azrika materis apostle memurim laktora lachila. The efshel lechash elav avodos hanechshavos mati. Just 1 second. We said that there's machshavas pigul at the time of shpichas shirayim, did we not? Let me go back for a second. Oh, on the top left on Chaf Aleph, Machshavas Pigul Yigamim Chishev al Shvichas Hashirayim. So in and of itself, Shvichas Shirayim is not an avodas matir. So Pigul in Shvichas Shirayim comes under a different halacha, namely it's part and parcel of the Zrikas Hadam. That the Zrikas Hadam is divided into 2 parts. There's the Zrika al Gabi Mizbech, and then there's the Zrika on the Yisoda Mizbech of what's Shirayim of the Dam. And we combine those 2, integrate them into one long Zrika. And that's called an Avodah Materis, even though the shmicha itself is not an avodah materes. But what is he excluding here when he says, "Yefshal lechashev ela bavodos hanechshavos mati"? I mean, like, what other avodos does he have in mind that are not classified as avodos mati? Any ideas come to mind? Maybe something to do with the lechem aponim. Maybe the lechem aponim, right? You place it on the shulchan. One second. Did we have anything about? You could talk about smicha. I don't know. Smicha is not an avoda. What about tenufa? Do we have tenufa? Where do we have tenufa? We had tenufa in Bikurim, I remember, but by a carbon of a nazir. Yeah, El Nazir needs tenufa. Was there a tenufa in Bukhar or Ma'aseh? I don't remember. We had that on one of the pages, I think. I don't have the Gemara here with me. I only have. I should have kept all the pages in a file. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. So maybe tenufa, but I don't know what he has in mind. We could talk about flea. Let's say before the Kohen eats the basar, he roasts the basar. Once again, I would be hard pressed to put that on both. I don't know exactly. Maybe Parma and Israfim, maybe they require Sreifa. Nah, I don't think Sreifa is an avodah. What about Malik? Well, Malika and Ophos would be like Shchita in Zvach. That would be an avodas amateres. But if you talk about an olas ha'of, what does he mean by materes? Materes for achilas odom? No, I think he means in general materes, even for achilas mizbeh. Otherwise, what are you going to do with the carbon olah? I'm sure there's pigul in an olah. He seems to put the emphasis here on matirim es adam. You see that? He says shchita matiro makadeshes adam likabala kabbalah matiro makadeshes adam lizrika. But then he writes hazrika materes es habosar. Murim Laktora Lachilu. You see here that the definition of a matir is even vis-a-vis achilas odom. And achilas mizbeach, Haktar say murim. So in the Korban Ola, all these avodas are matir, avodas hamatirin es haktar lemizbeach. Any guess? Anybody? Well, what does he mean? Elabavodos hanachshavos mat. What else does he have in mind? Oh, let's think about the kevish. Right, there were two Kohen. One Kohen would climb up the kevish and put down the emurim on the kevish. The other Kohen would now do the zrika of the basar of the emurim onto the marach. Let's just think about machshavas pigum. We had right, so we had the zrika. The zrika was matir the aktara. What about the aktara itself? Meaning placing the basar on the murim onto the H. Does that have the status of an avod? I mean, it's impossible to be maktir without somebody putting it on the H. But I don't know, I suspect that that's not an avodah materis. I mean, the zrika is matir the haktar, but the actual physical haktar, meaning bringing the carbon onto the mizbeah, onto the Eshon, that itself maybe is not an avodah materis. I mean, it's impossible without it. I mean, how are you going to be Mekayim Haktorah without? I mean, the meat is not going to jump onto the mizbeach on its own. That's not going to happen. But the Kohen is not involved in an avodah when he brings the meat onto the mizbeach. I don't even know what the status of a zar would be in there. Probably a zar is excluded, but I don't know. I don't think that would be critical. Then wait a minute. Let's talk about hafshata, hadocha. Maybe what we're saying is that, those avodos are not, do not lend themselves to machshavas pigul. Right, in certain cases, before you place the basar onto the mizbeach, you have to get rid of some of the innards. You do adacha, you do afshata, you remove the skins, and maybe you remove the peresh from inside and all that stuff. But that's not an avodah materis. Again, once again, it might be a technical necessity, but it's not classified as an avodah materis. Okay, so let's just make a note of where we got to. We're up to matir mefagil es hanitar. and then we'll negotiate about Monday because Monday is Erev Rosh Hashanah.